Queues for premium motor spirit, also known as petrol, have resurfaced in filling stations across the country. Queues by motorists obstructs vehicular movement from the early hours of the day in Lagos. From the Koi area of the island to the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, the situation remains unabated. Few persons were able to get the product, while others were not so lucky. In Ilorin, the Kwara State capital, the reason for this fuel queue is not far-fetched, as most of the filling stations here are not selling the product.
We don't understand what's going on. One thing, the fuel was okay, we were buying at normal price. The next morning, we found out that people are queuing, and some people are even selling as high as 200 and 190. So we don't know what is going on. We just implore the government to please help us and solve this problem.
However, motorists were seen buying fuel without any hassle, but at exorbitant prices in Damaturu, the Yobe State capital.
This true story illustrates why it's important to invest some time and effort into learning at least one other language apart from the language that you already know or consider your mother tongue. I have written several other articles in the past over the last, I would say, I've even written a book, the proven 5-step formula for learning any language in 3 months or less, which was based on a true story of how I learned to speak French. And it got me invited to appear on the NTH2 Channel 5's morning ride, I think on 2 occasions, way back in 2002. But then since then I've written articles about the experience I had traveling to Cameroon, coming back by sea and all that, where I went to learn the language and also improve my fluency. So I've always been screaming to people about how being able to speak French has opened doors for me when I'm crossing the border. I mean, interacting with people in the different countries. I found out that especially when I go to francophone countries, I've been to Douala. I've lived in Douala, Yaoundé. That's all 2 key cities in Cameroon. I've been in the Benin Republic for several years now, since 2013 that I began living there. And every once in a while I've crossed the borders in certain places and I've encountered people that could speak French, even within my own country. And what I can tell you is that there's never been a time that my ability to speak French has been anything resembling a disadvantage. And there's always been examples in my life of how being able to speak French has proven to be a very useful ability. It's a skill, a powerful skill that can earn you money. I think I've told the story also, I think, in an article about how a medical doctor in Benin Republic ran into me when I was in a cyber cafe in a place called, it's around Ita Carrefour. Ita that I'm talking about in English will be IITA, or in French is Ita, E-E-T-A. IITA, that's the way it's pronounced. And Ita Carrefour is in a place called Mendon. Sorry, not Mendon, sorry, that's Mendon is in Cameroon. It's in a place called what's the name of this town now? Calavi. Calavi is it's outside Cotonou. Okay, so it's not far. The Ita Carrefour is not far from the National University, which is the Université d'Abomey Calavi. I'm giving these details because I also believe that this video is most likely to be watched by people who are French speaking and some of whom would have lived or been to the areas that I mentioned, just so they get a good idea of what I'm talking about, and also it makes what I'm saying more credible, and so they'll take me seriously, hopefully. So for those of you who took in a proper parler anglais, quand tu m'entends, j'espère que avec cette histoire que je vais dire maintenant, tu vas comprendre que c'est possible et c'est bien que tu apprennes à parler l'anglais. Parce que c'est bon. Okay, so let me go ahead and tell you the story. And this happened on the let me see if I can get the date now. Okay, this happened on the 22nd of June, around I would say 8 o'clock in the morning. Let's say 8:15 in the morning, because I know I left the house around 8 o'clock. I was, and I am still currently in Lagos, and I'm staying in the family house. Whenever I come to Nigeria, that's where I stay. So I had to help to purchase just a little quantity of petrol. This fuel scarcity thing started a day before, and it was crazy, you know. Just all of a sudden, we woke up the next morning. That was on the 21st. We woke up on 21st, the day before, and we just found out there were just queues everywhere. There was no petrol in the stations. It didn't make sense. Nobody could understand why it was happening, and then the news started coming out, and some tanker drivers were protesting or something like that. But it just messed up everybody's lives. You know, I had to look for a taxi on behalf of my children's grandmother, and I couldn't get one because they were all giving me crazy fees. So I came back home very annoyed. But then again, what we won't do, it was just the reality of being in Nigeria. So then I was asked by the children's grandfather if I could help to get some bit of petrol. I actually assumed he was going to use it for the generator. So I took a stroll through the kind of back end of the estate, where we go through the walls into the petrol station that share the same wall with the estate. So I walked through there. The first petrol station I came right into was the Oando station. It wasn't having any petrol, so they weren't selling at all. So I walked out through there onto the closer to the road, and then walked up to the other Oando next to the closer to the pedestrian bridge. So I'm giving you these details so you know what I'm talking about. I'm giving you specific landmarks to look for, just to illustrate just how believable this story is. It's real. It happened, and I just want you to hopefully be inspired by it and encouraged to do what I'm going to recommend, which is invest some time and effort and a little money into learning another language. It doesn't matter if it's a local language or an international language, although I do recommend pick at least one international language to add to your skill set. Right, so I got to the station and I saw this. Of course, you can imagine fuel scarcity. There were queues everywhere, all the cars, you know, and then there were the human beings also that were trying to get fuel into kegs that they were carrying in their hands. So I joined them. There weren't many people, to be fair. There's probably about 10 of us. So we were at the first pump, and they were attending to us. They would attend to a few people with kegs, then they would attend to the cars. The cars were moving reasonably smoothly and on a regular basis. So at a point, the lady, one of the attendants, a lady, walked up to me and said, she looked at the fact that all the other guys had huge kegs. I think they're about 20-liter kegs, you know, those big, tall kegs. And all I had was a 5-liter keg because I just wanted a little quantity of petrol. And it was just, I had just 500 naira. And the lady asked me what I wanted to buy. I told her. So she took the keg from me, and I was saying, oh, look, I've just come. There are people I met here. And she said, no, it doesn't matter. What you're going to buy is just a small quantity. There's no point you waiting. These guys are going to take a long time before they get their day at the pump. So I said, okay. I gave it to her. She went and she filled it up. Then she told me it would cost 1,000 naira. And I froze. And I said, why 1,000 naira? She said, what kind of funny question are you asking me? Can't you see the way there is? We're actually selling to you guys, blah, 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 the usual stuff. And I said, well, unfortunately, I have only 500 naira. I was actually going to tell you I only wanted 500 naira's worth of fuel. She said, why didn't you say that before? She got very upset. The other man, the colleague that had sold the petrol, also got equally upset. And I mean, they were looking at me as if I committed some kind of a big crime. I couldn't understand what the outrage was about. Actually, let me be honest. I understood. You understand? But I wasn't going to play that. I make sure I play the fool when it comes to all these things, because I've learned that if I don't do that, I won't get what I want. So either way, I just play the fool. So I told them, oh, sorry, I didn't know that it would die expensive. And so they had, of course, added their own small fees on top of it and all that. So they said, well, the solution would be that I would wait. They had to look for someone to sell it to. Luckily for me, one of the other guys waiting with the big kegs asked for that to be sold to him. Initially, he balked when they told him it was going to be 1,000 naira, and he was saying, can this small keg of 5 liters be 1,000 naira? Eventually, he agreed, and they poured it into his big keg, and he gave the lady the money. But then, as soon as she did that and she handed me my keg, the lady instructed the guys at the pump not to sell to me. She was very, very, very serious about it and refused to even answer me when I called her to. I kept calling her, she wouldn't listen. So I stood there confused. I didn't know what to do. Other guys there were sympathizing with me, and I was wondering what would I do. So at the point she went away and then came back later to talk to one of the guys with the kegs. And when she did that, I think they were arguing about how much money was going to pay in addition to the actual amount to buy the petrol. And the guy then tried to speak to her in Igbo language, and she said, I don't understand Igbo. Then I cannot remember now. I know I had tried earlier to speak Yoruba. She had told me she did not understand Yoruba, but I never really took note of it in any way. I just assumed she must have been some other tribe. So by the time she was telling this other man she wasn't Igbo, I got curious and I paid attention to the conversation. The guy then said, so which language do you speak then? She then looked at him and said, do you speak French? And I'm a person, I do not waste opportunities. When I see opportunities, I have this sixth sense that tells me when there are opportunities that would be wise for one to take advantage of. So the minute I had her, I didn't even wait for her to ask that question twice or for the other guy to understand, because he was like, what? And I was like, do you speak French? And when I said I didn't say it in English. The minute she told him that, I looked at her. She had her back to me. She was looking at him on one side, so to her right hand side, and I was directly behind her. I just said to her straight away, with her back turned to me, I said, "Tu parles français?" And she turned and said, "Oui, je parle." I said, "Tu viens de quel pays?" So the first one I asked was, "Tu parles français?" That's, you speak French? And she said, "Yes, I do." And then I asked, "You come from what country?" She said Cameroon. So I said, "Tu es Camerounais?" Now, the minute I said "Tu es Camerounais," I quickly recalled that I had spoken wrongly. When you are speaking to a female, now I add these details because of my kids, because they are going to listen to this video and I want them to learn a few things. So, and any other person that wants to learn some basic French. So when you are talking to a male person about their nationality, so it depends on the country anyway. So in Cameroon, for instance, you have, for a Cameroonian, so Cameroonian lady, Cameroonian man is Cameroonian. But in French, it's not that way. You've got to decide whether you've got to identify whether the person is feminine or masculine. So for a woman, it will be Camerounaise. For a man, it will be Camerounais. Okay? So for a Nigerian, it will be Nigerian. So a Nigerian, okay? Then to a Nigerian will be for a female Nigerian. So I was supposed to have said to a Camerounais. So the minute I said to a Camerounais, she said oui. Then she proceeded to correct me. So just as I was not saying to a Camerounais, I was now correcting myself. As I was correcting myself, she was also saying, "C'est Camerounaise." I said, "Oui, oui." She said, and I said, "Oui, oui." That is, yes, yes, I know. Then I proceeded to say, "Oh wow." I said, "C'est bon." And then she said, "Tu es Nigerian?" I said, "Oui, je suis Nigerian, mais je vis à Cotonou." So, "Tu es Nigerian?" Are you Nigerian? Then I said, "Yes, I'm Nigerian, but I live at Cotonou." She just looked at me and her entire demeanor changed. She stretched out her hand, asking for the keg. I gave it to her and she went and filled it right. I mean, to be honest with you, it was amazing because the keg had been filled just up to below the neck. Now, that's the first time. So when she took it back, she filled it up to a point well above halfway. I'm telling you, you may not believe me. And then she gave it to me and I was like, "Oh wow, thanks." She just filled it up and then just asked for the money and I gave her the money. And all I had was the 500 naira. But what she had filled, I'm telling you, where she filled it up to, definitely should have more than 500 naira. So she just done it. It was like just a gesture. It was almost like her own way of appreciating the fact that she found somebody that could speak her language. I have been in other countries where I couldn't speak English for months on end. And then one day I ran into somebody that could speak English, and for me it was like I found my own brother or a sister. So I think in a way I could relate to how she reacted to me. And then when she did that and I gave her the money and I said, "J'étais au Cameroun 1999. J'étais au Cameroun en 1999 is saying that I was in Cameroon in 1999. 1900. 1000 is 1000. 900. 9 is 9. 100 is 100. So 1900 is 1000. Okay, 900. You get it? 900. 900. So 1999. 80 is 80. 4 is 4. 20 is 20. So 80. Then 19. 19 is 10 and 9. 10 is 10. 9 is 9. 1999 is 1999. So j'étais au Cameroun en 1999. So I told her, so she said, oh oui, c'est bon. Alors j'étais au Cameroun, j'ai vu à Douala et aussi à Yaoundé. J'ai vu à Douala et aussi à Yaoundé is I lived in Douala and also in Yaoundé. So she was excited. We talked. This was her country. I was mentioning to her. Of course, she was still busy. She had to go back to the pump and all that. But we exchanged a few more. Of course, there was no time to exchange phone numbers or anything. But this was just very close to the estate, so I knew I could always go back and trace her if I wanted to. So she said, "À la prochaine," when I was leaving. "À la prochaine" means next time. Kind of see you next time. See you around. So "À la prochaine." And I said, "Oui, merci beaucoup." And then, thank you, yes, thank you. And I left. People were just looking at me in shock. And I couldn't really talk to the other guys. I was just in a hurry, but I was so excited at the same time. And when I got to the house, I had to tell my kid's grandmother, look, the power of being able to speak a language had just saved me. I would have probably come back here to you guys without being able to help you get the petrol, because they had sent the housekeeper to get petrol the day before, and she had come back empty-handed. I mean, it was one thing to have to stay on the lines, another thing to get there and then they're told, sorry, petrol is finished, or we're closing for the day and things like that. And then you couldn't, there's nothing to give you any special attention or get you noticed specially, set you apart from the other people on the line. In my case, what happened to me was that first of all, I had a smaller keg that got me attention the first time. The second time, I could speak a language that nobody else there could speak. When she asked, can you speak this language? And I'm sure she was expecting that they would all say no, because how many Nigerians do you meet walking the streets of Nigeria able to speak French and converse in French, with a complete stranger? So it's not like what they teach you in Nigerian schools, where they just teach you those basic things, saba. So this is actually carrying a conversation with somebody you don't know and having an intelligent discussion. All right, so I know it's a short story, but I'm sure you agree with me that it illustrates perfectly the power of being able to speak. And this applies to any language, because if I had been speaking to a Hausa person and all the others could not speak Hausa and I was able to speak Hausa, it is very likely that I would have been able to connect better with the person than those who could not speak the language that the person understood better. Because she spoke English, but it was like she was saying, if you're so insistent on speaking a language to me, then speak my language. My language is French. So I always tell people that it's important to sit down and analyze yourself in terms of what your passions and interests are, and decide on the skill set you are going to acquire for yourself over a period of time based on the dreams and ambitions you have. So if your goal in life is to, for instance, be a traveler, then you want to look at what kinds of languages are you going to most likely need depending on where you intend to travel to, and then sit down ahead of time and learn those languages before you go out. Not just languages, also skills that will benefit you on that journey you want to embark on. Or maybe it's a career opportunity you are looking at. Maybe you are looking to become a journalist and you're looking at a journalist that maybe going to cover travel, tourism, things like that. That means you may find yourself interviewing diplomats from different countries. You probably want to learn languages like French, Yoruba, Hausa, because I'm talking about people. You could meet somebody who is from Benin Republic, who is a journalist. I have a journalist friend. He doesn't speak English. He only speaks French and Yoruba. So if you cannot speak either of those languages, how do you connect with him? So the same thing applies to people who are going to travel. You want to probably learn Italian, German, some of the more common, more white languages are more widespread use than other languages. Of course, English, for those of us that are from English-speaking countries, we take English for granted. But there are some people who will give an arm and a leg to be able to speak English the way we do. So I met people like that in Cameroon, in Benin Republic. They were always excited to hear me speak French. Some of them would say, "Come on, tu manges anglais," that's you eat English. And I said, "Well, you eat French as well." So because I was born and raised speaking English, so for me it comes naturally. The same thing with them; they speak French, it comes naturally to them. Now, if you were able to acquire that ability too, it will open doors of all kinds. I've had my experiences at the border come out completely pleasant for me because I could speak French compared to what other people had to go through with the green passport from Nigeria. The minute I showed my passport and I was asked one question, I would respond in French deliberately. The minute I responded in French, it would lead to a conversation about how could you speak in French and you speak it so well with a clean accent. Where did you learn it? Blah, blah, blah. Next thing I know, I'm being ushered through the border post, and that's it. And so that's how I'm going to end this. I've done several articles in which I talked about how being able to speak French or any other language, by the way, would open doors of opportunities for you. I hope this illustrates perfectly for you, probably more accurately, just how this can benefit you. Because right in my own country, where English is the everyday language, the lingua franca, as it were, is where the ability to speak French enabled me to achieve an outcome I wanted, even after it looked like I had completely lost the opportunity. The opportunity landed in my lap. So I was given the fuel, ahead of other people, even though I came there later than them. And then I said I couldn't buy that quantity, and they said they're not selling anything to you anymore, go away. And suddenly, just that opportunity to speak French allowed me to get what I wanted in record time, and I was out of the place. I don't think I spent up to 30 minutes with them. And some of them told me they've been there for a while, just waiting because they had these huge kegs they wanted to buy. So that's it. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, reach out to me using the contact details on the screen. I wish you well.